You are listening to Compound Money Quietly, the CMQ Investing Podcast. My name is Chris Franco. We're going to call this episode Unconventional or Unpopular Opinion, potentially offensive opinion. Okay, here's what it is. I think Cathie Wood is delusional and potentially a crazy person. So if anyone has any questions about whether I would put any money in any of her funds, the answer is a very emphatic no. Now, I'll have all the details why that is in just a second. Just want to quickly remind you, if you've yet to follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please take a few seconds to do that now, and that way you will never miss an episode. As soon as they are uploaded, you will have them in your feed. But why do I think Cathie Wood is crazy, and why do I think that should be said? One, because people act like she's, a wizard, like she literally can see the future. We know that's not true. And second, it's because people tend to follow past performance and get themselves killed that way, which a lot of the people that poured money into the ARK funds in the last, call it 12 months, have found out. People jumped into ARKK because ARK delivered about 150% returns in 2020. Incredible performance, right? Like incredible. I'm not taking anything away from it. But when people see that, hey, the ARK did 150%, that's when the inflows really started coming in. But I'll explain why this is. When those inflows come in, that actually makes it a lot harder to ever, continue that performance. So the reason for that is because she's now dealing with a much larger sum of money that she has to allocate. Her strategy worked really well when she had $3.8 billion in assets under management. How does that change when there's $50 billion in assets under management? Simply put, you have to change your strategy. You cannot do the same things you were doing. And that in itself, you're now investing with a Cathie Wood who is forced to do something that wasn't what led her to get the results she achieved in the first place. Now, back to why she's delusional and she's crazy and she needs to be silenced. It's because she's still going on TV acting like everything's sweet. She's saying that she's expecting over the next 5 years 40% compounded returns for the ARK fund, which I'm sorry, but that's like dangerous to say something like that. We said about earlier today, I was talking about base rates. In the history of investment management, how many people have delivered performance like she did, and then after that, compounded money at 40% for the next 5 years? I think it's delusional. Could it happen? Sure. I mean, I could walk outside and Beyonce could be there and be like, God, I never saw anyone as handsome as you before. I think I'm going to get divorced from Jay-Z and become your number one girl. And that could happen, but the likelihood is a slim to none. It's pretty unlikely unless this podcast really blows up. But the bigger thing back to Cathie Wood, I just can't stand people. I think she believes what she's saying, but that makes her even more crazy dangerous because she goes on TV and they're like, Cathie, the ARK funds are really taking a beating. She's like, well, here's the thing. So our research, and we have the best research. I'm not making any promises, but innovation. And she said, if you take Cathie Wood, right, and then you start using the Donald Trump voice for Cathie Wood, you realize that she talks like Donald Trump did when he was president, when Trump would just say like, you look at what's going on, you look at everything that's happening, it's so incredible. We've got the best people. It's going to be so good, okay? You're going to make so much money. That I can tell you. I promise you that. Trillions and trillions of dollars, innovation, Operation Warp Speed, skibidi-bidi-doop. Like Cathie Wood is more or less saying those same things. She just has a different voice and she's presented in a different way, but she's drumming up, in my opinion, more inflow. She's trying to increase assets under management because that is her incentive system. That is how her firm makes money. That's the name of the game. It's getting people to invest with her. And so when things get a little shaky like they are right now, she's almost got to like double down, triple down on what she's saying. And that's what she's done with this, I think, absurd prediction that there's going to be potentially 40% returns over the next 5 years. Let me just give you the actual number. She said a 40% compound rate of return per annum for the next 5 years for ARKK. Now, since inception, since the birth of ARKK through December of 2021, the total return has been 26%. So that's a 26% annualized return, which is great. Props to her. But this idea that she's going to improve upon that in the next 5 years, it's just there's very little evidence that that's possible. There was a study that I remember reading about the various people who had been named the fund managers of the decade by Morningstar. And I believe almost all of them who were in the top, 5 or 10, ended up in the bottom half in the subsequent or the following decade. So it's an interesting example of, I guess we could call it regression towards the mean. But it's also, I think, in part, the reality that happens to a lot of these fund managers, the strategies and the tactics that they use to achieve the results that they achieved that got them so much excitement around them and led to so much money coming in. Well, then they have the problem that comes with scale. They have, success can create its own issue. In this case, when you have, exponentially more money that you have to allocate, requires you to play a different game. All the while, the environment in which you're investing is changing. So think about interest rates and how that would affect some of Cathie Wood's, many of the names that are in Cathie Wood's portfolio for ARKK. These are technology companies that, in all likelihood, are going to have, you're going to see the prices go down as interest rates go up. And we could make a whole episode about that, but that's just one other reason why this prediction by her is so absurd. And I think, and just to be, as rational and objective as I can, I mean, look, she's drumming up assets under management. That's what this has to be. And she's trying to keep people from fleeing the fund. I want to leave us with something that was published in the Financial Times. It would have been, I believe it was earlier this week. I'm going to pull it up right now. It was titled, Cathie Wood's flagship ARK fund suffers fresh blow in early 2020. Now, I'm not going to read the entire article, but there was a couple interesting points here that I think will be important just to, kind of come full circle with. So far this year, $300 million has been removed from the ARK fund. It also notes that Wood's concentrated wagers on often small, potentially disruptive companies are hailed as bold bets by her fans, but deemed reckless by critics. They turbocharge ARK's performance on its way up, but have now left it particularly exposed as the tide turns. And that comes back to what I said about interest rates. Since setting up ARK Invest in 2014, Wood has carved out a position as a pioneer in the fast-growing market for actively managed ETFs, captivating the imagination of legions of retail investors and billions of dollars through her ability to sell an investment narrative and a savvy adoption of social media. ARKK has delivered average annual gains of almost 30%. And finally, one of Europe's largest asset managers estimates that the average investor in the ARK ETF is now underwater because while ARK's long-term record of average annual gains is stellar, many of those gains came when it had a much smaller asset base. And that is a example of, or illustration of, a time-tested investing lesson that I've learned and really followed. And that is, avoiding chasing past performance. I have a thing pulled up here. I have a little document that I made of all the major investing mistakes that have been documented in academic studies by legendary investors and beyond. And one of them is, one is investing in fad instruments, and you could certainly call ARK a fad instrument. Next, following the herd. Investors tend to crowd into the hottest performing fund. The returns that attract them, as I said, are the past returns. And this overcrowding contributes to what we would, call reversion to the mean. And these past fund managers that have kind of been the Cathie Woods of the past, one of the reasons that I've noticed some of them have cited for their ultimate demise is the difficulty in allocating so much more cash, than they were previously forced to allocate. Now, on that note, this has been Compound Money Quietly, the CMQ Investing Podcast. My name is Chris Franco. Thank you for listening. And if you have a chance and you're listening through Apple Podcasts, please leave a written review. It only takes a few minutes and it goes a very long way. Please make sure to also rate this 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And now actually Spotify has the ability for you to rate podcasts. So please go ahead and do that. I really appreciate it. Thank you for helping this content reach more people and for allowing Compound Money Quietly, the CMQ Investing Podcast, to grow and grow and grow and take over the world. And then I'm going to start an actively managed ETF centered around random themes, and I'm going to become the male Cathie Wood. So just get ready for that, all right? It's only a matter of time, baby. Later.